For 40 years, two queens hunted each other across the kingdoms of Francia. Sister against sister-in-law, court against court, assassination by hired blade and assassination by poisoned cup. In the year VIII 97, one of them died. She died of natural causes, in her own bed, after 30 years of warfare and every imaginable attempt on her life. Most chronicles record this moment as the end of the war. The other queen thought so too. She lit candles for the dead enemy out of routine, not relief. She had buried too much already. 16 years later, the war killed her anyway. She was 70. She died in a courtyard in Burgundy. She died tied to a horse the soldiers had left wild on purpose. The wrong queen had survived first. The dead queen was Fredegund. The other, the one who outlived her by 16 years and still lost the war, was Brunhilda. This is not the story of a witch. The Chronicle of Fredegund would tell you that Jezebel, harlot, devourer of kings. The chronicle was paid for by the men who killed her. She was a Visigothic princess who married into the largest Christian kingdom in Western Europe at 23. Her sister was murdered within a year. She spent the next 4 decades ruling through 4 generations of Merovingian kings. She won every battle. She did not lose a war until the war itself outlived everyone who started it. Before we descend into the longest royal vendetta in European history, drop a comment with your city and country. Hit subscribe and join Velour Spectre, a fast-growing community of viewers who refuse to let history's most dangerous women be erased. You are watching Velour Spectre, the premium dark history channel, where forgotten queens get the chapters they were denied. The Frankish kingdom of the 6th century operated like a machine designed to consume itself. When the great King Clovis died in 511, he had unified Gaul under a single Christian crown. Then his sons divided it. Then their sons divided it again. By the time the curtain rose on Brunhilda's generation, Francia had splintered into 3 rival subkingdoms: Austrasia in the east, Neustria in the west, Burgundy in the south, each ruled by a Merovingian prince who considered the other 2 his rightful inheritance. This was not a stable system. It was a production cycle for civil war. Every royal death triggered a new division of territory among surviving sons. Every division triggered a new round of assassinations to consolidate the pieces. The infrastructure of Frankish power ran on 3 commodities: marriages, murders, and child kings ruled by their mothers. Brunhilda was a Visigothic princess, the daughter of King Athenagilde of Spain. In her 2015 study, Queens, Consorts, Concubines, et. Daily notes that Brunhilda was unusually well-educated, fluent in Latin, raised in the Romanized Visigothic court of Toledo, trained in the administrative arts that most Frankish nobles could barely read. The Merovingians needed her bloodline. They did not anticipate her intelligence. The man waiting to marry her was Sigebert, king of Austrasia. He had 2 brothers. The middle brother, Chilperic, ruled Neustria. The youngest, Guntram, ruled Burgundy. All 3 watched each other for signs of weakness. All 3 had concubines, illegitimate sons, and ambitious mistresses pushing for upgrade. One of those mistresses was a former servant named Fredegund. In 567, she had not yet been crowned. She was operational. She was waiting. The machine was about to start consuming itself faster than anyone in Toledo could have predicted, and the queens at the center of it would become both the engineers and the raw material. Brunhilda arrived in Austrasia in 567 with a dowry her new husband had not expected: a library, a household of Visigothic administrators, and a working knowledge of how to run a kingdom. She was 23. Venantius Fortunatus, the Italian poet who saw her at court that year, described her in his commissioned verses as tall, golden-haired, with a measured voice, and the bearing of someone trained to be addressed by ambassadors. The marriage was political theater. King Sigebert needed a wife of royal blood. His middle brother Chilperic had been collecting concubines from the kitchens, and the diplomatic embarrassment was costing Austrasia leverage. Brunhilda solved the problem. The wedding in Metz featured a procession of 50 pack mules carrying her dowry through the city, and Fortunatus wrote a 318-line epithalamium for the occasion. She converted from Arian Christianity to Catholic Orthodoxy within months. Then she began writing letters to bishops, to Pope Gregory the Great, to Constantinople. She positioned herself as the diplomatic spine of her husband's reign. According to Janet Nelson's analysis of Merovingian ritual politics, no Frankish queen before her had operated at this scale of correspondence and church patronage. Her sister Galswintha followed her north within months. The Visigothic court had brokered a second marriage, Galswintha to Chilperic, the brother with the kitchen girl problem. It was meant to stabilize the rivalry between the two kingdoms. It would do the opposite. The kitchen girl was not finished. Galswintha married Chilperic in the autumn of 567. She brought a dowry comparable to her sister's: gold, silver plate, household staff, and the political weight of the Visigothic crown standing behind her. Brunhilda, watching from Austrasia, expected the marriage to mirror her own. 2 queens, 2 kingdoms, a diplomatic bridge between Toledo and Francia. Fredegund had a different ledger. She had been Chilperic's concubine before Galswintha arrived. He had set her aside temporarily, a paperwork gesture required to bring a Visigothic princess into the bedroom, but he had not removed her from the palace. Within months, the new queen began complaining. Galswintha asked to be sent home. She offered to leave her dowry behind in exchange for safe return to Spain. Chilperic refused. Then one morning in 5068, Galswintha was found strangled in her bed. Gregory of Tours, writing within living memory of the event, recorded that the king mourned for a few days and then married Fredegund within the week. The Frankish court understood the chronology. So did the Visigothic court. So did Brunhilda. She was 25 years old. She had been Queen of Austrasia for less than a year. Her sister was dead in a bed in Soissons, and the woman now occupying that bed was the architect of the murder. Brunhilda did what any Visigothic noble of her generation would have done. She demanded the wergild, the legal blood price owed to her family under Frankish law. Chilperic refused that too. The cities Galswintha had been given as a Morgange, Bordeaux, Limoges, Cahors, Béarn, and Bigorre, were now claimed by Austrasia as compensation. Sigebert mobilized. Chilperic mobilized in response. The first Frankish civil war of the new generation opened over a strangled girl in Soissons, and it would not formally close until 613. 45 years. The countdown started here. Brunhilda was now both queen and avenger. The two roles would not separate again. By 575, the war between the brothers had run for 7 years across the contested cities of Aquitaine and Poitou. Brunhilda had given Sigebert 3 children. The youngest, a son named Childebert, was 5 months old when the campaign turned decisive. Sigbert's army cornered Chilperic in the city of Tournai. Chilperic was prepared to surrender. The Frankish nobles of Neustria had switched sides en masse, recognizing Sigebert as the rightful king of a reunified Francia. On a December afternoon in Vitry, the assembled nobles raised Sigebert on a shield, the ancient Frankish ritual of acclamation, and proclaimed him sovereign of both kingdoms. Picture that moment, the shield held high, the Austrasian victory shouted across a winter field. Brunhilda's husband, 38 years old, at the apex of a war that had taken 7 years to win. 2 men approached him through the crowd. They carried Scramma's axes, short, single-edged Frankish knives, concealed in their cloaks. According to Gregory of Tours, writing within months of the event, the blades had been coated with poison. The men had been dispatched by Fredegund. Sigebert went down on the shield. The Austrasian nobles scattered. The reunification of Francia ended in the time it took 2 anonymous men to push through a crowd. Brunhilda was in Paris when the news arrived. She was 32. Her infant son was now the sole Merovingian heir to Austrasia. Within hours, Chilperic's forces moved on her household. She was captured. Her jewels were inventoried. Her gold was entered into the Neustrian treasury as conquered property. Chilperic exiled her to Rouen. He kept the infant Childebert as hostage. He believed the Austrasian succession was now his to control. He had calculated everything except his own nephew. Brunhilda's first decade as widow ran on a logic Chilperic could not anticipate. From her exile in Rouen, she encountered her step-nephew Merovingian, Chilperic's own son by a former wife, a young prince out of favor with the new Neustrian regime. In the spring of 5076, the two married. The political logic was vertical. Brunhilda gained a claim on the Neustrian succession. Merovingian gained an alliance against his father. Chilperic responded by hunting his own son. Merovingian fled to a basilica, then to a forest, then to a friend's villa in Therouanne. Gregory of Tours documents the final scene in detail. Cornered and unwilling to surrender to his father, Merovingian ordered his servant to kill him. The servant obeyed. Brunhilda buried a second husband by association. She returned to Austrasia by 507 and assumed regency over her 5-year-old son, the new King Childebert II. The Austrasian nobles were divided about her. Many resented being ruled by a woman. Several attempted to seize the boy and govern through him, bypassing his mother entirely. Brunhilda outmaneuvered every faction. She kept her son. She kept the throne. The grinding war with Neustria continued. 8 years passed. Chilperic ruled, raided, and married another concubine. Then in 584, in the forest of Chelles, returning from a hunt, Chilperic was stabbed to death by an unknown assailant. Gregory of Tours suspected Fredegund. Most modern scholarship agrees. Chilperic had recently learned of one of her affairs and was contemplating consequences. The contemplation ended at Chelles. Fredegund moved within hours. She secured the infant Clothar II, her 4-month-old son, and barricaded herself in Paris with the royal treasury. She was now sole regent of Neustria. The two women who had hated each other for 16 years were now the official rulers of their respective kingdoms. The proxy wars escalated. For 11 more years, Brunhilda fought through her son. Childebert II grew into a capable king. He campaigned in Italy, negotiated with Constantinople, and inherited Burgundy when his uncle Guntram died in 592. By 595, Childebert ruled 2/3 of all Frankish territory. The reunification his father had nearly achieved was within his grasp. He died that spring. He was 25 years old. The cause was never determined. The court physicians described convulsions and a high fever. The Austrasian nobles whispered the name they had been whispering for decades. Brunhilda buried her son. She was now 52 years old. She had outlived a husband, a sister, a nephew-husband, 2 brothers-in-law, and now her child. Fredegund was still alive in Paris, still ruling, still untouchable. The ledger was 30 years old and counting. Brunhilda was 54 years old when news arrived from Paris that Fredegund had died. The year was 597. The cause was natural. After 30 years of warfare, assassinations, exile, the murder of her sister and her son, the woman she had spent every adult year of her life trying to destroy had been carried off by ordinary illness. She thought it was over. She was wrong. Fredegund left behind a 13-year-old son, Clothar II, now the sole king of Neustria. The vendetta inherited. Brunhilda had not anticipated the durability of the next generation's hatred. For the next 16 years, she ruled through her 2 grandsons, Theudebert II of Austrasia and Theoderic II of Burgundy, both crowned as boys, both nominally under her regency. She rebuilt the Roman roads in Burgundy. She patronized the Abbey of Luxeuil. She corresponded with Pope Gregory the Great on questions of liturgy and discipline. According to Janet Nelson, the scale of administrative continuity Brunhilda maintained across 4 reigns in 40 years was unmatched by any Merovingian queen before or after. But the grandsons grew up. They began to resent her. The Austrasian nobles, restless under a queen mother who had outlasted 3 generations of them, began offering their counsel to Theudebert directly. By 600 and then the 2 brothers were openly at war with each other. Brunhilda backed Theoderic of Burgundy. In 612 his armies defeated Theoderic's. Theodebert was captured and killed shortly after. On his grandmother's orders or with her acquiescence. Stand inside that moment for a second. A woman of 69 years old, who had buried a husband, a sister, a son, and a step-nephew husband, now bore responsibility for the death of one grandson at the hands of another. The chronicle was already writing her epitaph. Then Theuderic himself died, suddenly from dysentery in the spring of 613. He was 25 years old, the same age her own son had been when he died. Brunhilda was now 70. She had 3 great-grandsons. She moved to crown the eldest, a 4-year-old named Sigebert II, in a desperate maneuver to preserve the Austrasian succession one more generation. The Austrasian nobles, finally exhausted, made their decision. They opened the gates to Clothar II. Fredegund's son had been waiting his entire reign for this moment. His army crossed the border. The defending Austrasian forces, organized by nobles who had already negotiated their surrender in secret, melted without resistance. Brunhilda was captured near Renève in the Vosges. The 4-year-old Sigebert Tuck and his younger brother were captured with her. Both children were killed within hours. She was brought before Clothar II in the Burgundian palace at Renève. According to the Chronicle of Fredegund, hostile propagandist, but our only detailed source, he accused her of murdering 10 Frankish kings. The list included his own father. The trial lasted 3 days. What was done to her across those 3 days is recorded in the chronicle in detail. This telling will pass over the catalogue. On the 3rd day, Clothar ordered her brought into the courtyard. She was paraded on the back of a camel for the assembled army to see. The Chronicle of Fredegund, hostile in every line, recorded that she rode the camel without weeping. Then they brought the horse. It was an unbroken stallion, deliberately left wild. Her wrists were tied to one set of ropes, her ankles to another. The harness was tested. The horse was released. The chronicle is precise about what followed. This telling will not be. She was 70 years old. She had outlived 4 kings, including the husband who started the war and the enemy who fueled it. She had ruled in name or by proxy across nearly 4 decades. She had restored Roman infrastructure, founded monasteries, written letters to popes. She had buried more family than most peasants saw born. The ropes did the rest of the work. The crowd was instructed to cheer. Most of them did. Clothar II united Francia under his rule within months of Brunhilda's death. He reigned for 16 more years. He never produced a queen with anything close to Brunhilda's diplomatic reach. The Merovingian dynasty he reunified lasted another century and a half. It then collapsed into the rois fainéants, the powerless do-nothing kings, and was replaced by the Carolingian line descended from his own mayors of the palace. Within 4 generations, Clothar's blood had been politically erased. The monasteries Brunhilda founded continued. Outlived became one of the great training grounds of the medieval church. Her Roman roads remained in use through the Frankish Renaissance. Charlemagne, 2 centuries later, rode them. The Chronicle of Fredegund was composed within decades of her death. It described her as Jezebel, a witch, a destroyer of kings. The chronicle was commissioned by descendants of the men who killed her. Most queens are erased. She was rewritten. Michel Foucault wrote that power and knowledge are not separate. Power produces knowledge. The regimes that survive get to determine what was true, what was treason, and what was witchcraft. The Chronicle of Fredegund exists because Clothar II's descendants funded it. The lesson is not new. Tacitus knew it when he wrote that Roman emperors rewrote the senators they had killed. The Tudors knew it when they painted Richard III as a hunchback. Every regime that takes a throne by force commissions a biography of the person whose throne they took. The biography is rarely true. It is always read. Tourists today visit Outlived Abbey in the Vosges. They photograph the cloister Brunhilda paid for. Most have never heard her name. Her killers have been forgotten too. The horses do not remember. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If this story changed the way you think about who gets remembered as a hero and who gets remembered as a witch, subscribe, hit the like button, and share with someone who needs to see a queen restored to her own story. You have just watched another premium documentary from Velour's Spectre. Click the video appearing on your screen right now. The descent into the past continues.